I couldn't figure out what I was doing with the videos. The previous video has a little bit of the beginning of the turn discussion, but the resource phase, and we reallocated the forces. So the Second Army is still planning on being down here with the First Army covering the north for the Prussians. With the Fourth Army, I may not swap units. I may instead decide to march down with most of my force and join this landwehr. At some point or another, I'm going to have to use landwehr anyway. You know, the majority of my new forces are coming in as such. Of course, I can only bring 4 in, and this is what's kind of weird. They don't have markers to attract which 4 you can bring in within France, and then the rest that you can't. So yeah, I know I have 6, but if I could conceivably build more landwehr. If I start ending up with an army that's mainly landwehr, I'll stop paying as much for the troops, right? And that's something I think the French are going to be doing, and that may force the Prussians to build up their own army in order to match it, rather than having a professional army. And so, you know, I only have to pay 70% of the cost, right? In terms of the influence points that get peddled later. It's very hard to get the Cav or the Functeurs built up that way, though, because they have to be done in one swoop. Let's see. For the French, I shifted over here. What is this? Third Corps? I can't read it. Yep, the Third Corps. Yeah, now you can't read anything. The Third Corps, and I can't read it with my naked eyes. The only way to read it is either to hold it right up to my light, or and squint and put it right in the right place on my bifocal or transition lenses, or zoom in with the camera. It's how bad either my eyes or the counters are, and honestly, it's the counters. My eyes have problems, but not. Anyway, so I shifted one fairly large-sized corps over. Then I did a recount just to make sure I don't have to move Napoleon. And this is going to be kind of tricky, because the French army is actually evenly divided between, or the French forces are evenly divided between those two armies. So I got to be real careful with the French, because they're right on the line. The Second Army, I'm pretty sure, is still the mighty one, which sucks, because, you know, I want to send that one down to go do exciting things, right? The First Army is going to kind of hold the line up here and try to prevent problems from occurring. The Second Army is going to be part of this, with the Second and Fourth trying to crush through here and just completely degrade the French position. And then, you know, we'll see, because it's hard to get to Verdun. You know, the French get to pay victory points or something to build that rail line. Well, the lack of that rail line is really a bonus for the French, as far as I'm concerned. Once Metz falls, yeah, now what? You no longer have that route. You have this route going up here. Of course, this wouldn't suffice, because this is following the same rail line. So, you know, I'd have that double dipping there. The 2 runs going over the same track, which if you're used to 18XX, you can't do, right? All right. French side of the first initiative was pretty simple. I don't even remember what happened. But on the Prussian side, things were very complicated, because they danced around. They moved this Fourth Army, marching it up this way towards Nancy. But they also did this shifting, where they have this divisional command here that they left behind to watch the Francteurs. And they had to leave some troops behind here, so they left them not in the corps. There were a couple of infantry there, which the corps sucked up, which it's sieging. That's part of the Fourth Army over there. And I may, you know, eventually be detaching it, but not this turn. It's not worth the, even if it's out of command, it doesn't really hurt. It's just doing what it's supposed to do. The Fourth Army succeeded in its attack, wiped out everything except the cavalry. That's a victory point which the Prussians get back. Hey, it even says German, not Prussian. Awesome. I'm not the only one to do that. But because I'm playing with the optional rail rules, in order to capture this rail hex and get my railhead up to Nancy, I had to march back. Now, I didn't have to march back with everything. Probably cheated. Just looking, this probably had fucking congestion. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we're here. And let's put we don't own this rail hex. Yeah, we've got a railhead elsewhere. So I'm gonna have to capture that with something else. And I guess that's that. But it was, one of those things with the coordinated movement going on with, 2 units moving, but crossing each other. You had to kind of time it right, otherwise I would have gotten congestion the other way. But yeah, 2, 4, this would have gotten me here. The French cav got an extra hex of retreat, so they fell back on Toul. And it looks like something's kind of happening and breaking loose. The Prussians really can't do a lot, like I was saying, because they've got these sieges going on. But, if I can force the French to go down and deal with the Fourth Army, well, then maybe that opens up an opportunity for the Second Army to smash through or something like that. Small activation, die roll disparity, where basically the Prussians chase these Franketeers further away from their lines of communication with the division, and also grab the rail link that they needed. And on the big one, the Second Army moved down, but the bigger thing, the Fourth Army moved forward, chased those cav away, and laid siege to Toul. Meanwhile, the French are mainly trying to build up reinforcements. And the Prussians are doing so too, but the French really feel like, hey, I need a new army up here. I did start to build one here, but it's just mobile units, so it's not exactly what I need. But I have an extra army available now. I have the Army of the Loire, which, if I put that down here, should be in a position to help cope. However, I'm playing with the option on building troops, so they've got to be built in a fort or town, city, fortress, whatever. So they're not, right where I wanted them. I could have built them right here, but I was pretty sure I'm going to have that under siege right away. So now I have to fall back a little bit further. And this is, once this fort is gone, it becomes a threat on the main French line. Of course, there's a lot of other stuff going on at the same time that's a threat on the French line. It's able to hold for a while. That's the big deal. With the Second Army moving down here, if I'd had this big die roll, the Army of the Rhine might have come down and taken a shot at the First Army again, just because it's weaker. Game is getting kind of interesting. With the Army of the Rhine crossing this stream, putting a threat on the First Army, it's too big to move more than one hex across terrain, because I got 2 corps in the army. Again, if you don't spread out, you end up moving very, very slowly. So the Prussians' reaction, they couldn't do a reaction out there, was to spend movement and move most of the Second Army here. I've got some of it covering here, a couple of weak corps. This gives me the opportunity to probably intercept into either one of those hexes. I think I cheated last time when I intercepted with the Prussians, in that they had a lot of corps formations. Now, it wasn't that big a deal, but it counted towards their artillery power, etc. I think I brought their entire army up that way. They wouldn't have been able to move that far. In fact, I don't think they would have been able to move 2 hexes. And that may be one of the things that most of the French reactions have been 1 hex reactions. This was the only 2 hex reaction I think I've seen. Not positive, but you get at most a 2 hex. Well, a 2 something reaction effect, and it's not clear. It's definitely movement points, sort of, kind of, which is to say that I have to look at how it's worded, but a 2 hex reaction range would not have worked. I could not have brought the whole, or even really a significant portion of the First Army with me that far. And in fact, this hex, because, or the Second Army, this hex, because the First Army sitting in it, I couldn't have reacted into. So that last French defeat probably shouldn't have even happened. On the other hand, I exacerbated the situation by pulling the French back further than perhaps I wanted to, because now I'm having to inch my way forward. You know, it's a learning game to some extent. I'm going to make mistakes. The French launched an attack, and with just 1 army, they don't have the kind of bonuses that they had elsewhere, and on offense. So it was about even, honestly. And they got driven back. They chose to retreat another hex. I don't think I'm going to make that adventure again. I did manage to pull the Second Army out of position a little bit, and now, well, now I've got the problem that it's the German initiative or the Prussian initiative, and they can rally their unit and could conceivably hit us, I think. Let's see. Nah, they can't move quickly enough. The other thing is, it's not a good command. First of all, it's down to 1 strength point per unit, which is really ugly. This is extra. I got a lot of things to clean up. Okay, I'm not quite sure what to do with the Prussians, because the thing is, they've got 3 sieges underway, and you know, the one thing that's loose is that Second Army, but I don't have enough command points because the king is there. I've got to be careful. I think the French just drove their army of the Rhine below the size of the army of Alsace, which means Louis Napoleon has to make his way over to a different army. Shit. Okay, I did that whole battle with the army of Alsace's strength points. I don't fucking know what to do at this point. I don't know. I mean, I can give them back the strength points that they lost there. But, yeah, I just... these kind of charts where you're looking things up regularly on, you know, off-play map pieces, like these player aids here, those were always kind of problematic for me. And as I pointed out before, the French chart is particularly bad. Not that up there, which is where the confusion really came from. But here you got 1st Corps, 2nd Corps, 4th Corps, 3rd Corps, Guard, 5th, 7th, 6th, 24th, 12th. I mean, it's just like, I understand it was done for space, but it's kind of randomly positioned now. I think there's information on the back of these, so you don't really want to cut them out. Somebody suggested that was noted in the rules as an option, but I really don't like cutting my games apart like that. Maybe, you know, if there were little cards to hold them, but they're just really, really, like many of the other aspects, getting in the way here. Jesus. Yeah, this was a much better army. It's got better leadership. I counted the +2 for Canrobert. That's here as well. But I was looking at these units, and instead of like 2nd Corps, which is a +2, I can't read these fuckers. 4th Corps would have put me up to +3, +4, +5 is what I would have had. Wait. Well, what the hell is this corps? Oh, that got eliminated. Okay. Yeah, so there's a +5 just sitting in terms of leadership on the Army of the Rhine. Now, that didn't really matter, but the extra strength points probably did. But they were within 1. So I'm just going to reallocate the strength points and say it's good. Going around with troop strength, you can see the Second Army moved back into place, considering an attack here. But otherwise, the French building up a corps here to try to prevent the Fourth Army from doing too much damage in the long run. This is not an immediate operation here, but and I have to worry about Verdun as well. Not too much, because I can't go very far from Verdun, and I probably can't siege it. It's a fortification. It's a fortress, so yeah, I really do want to get the railway going there. But you know, that's not anything that's going to happen in the near future. The other threat is a possibility of hitting from this direction, but you know, I've got too much to do. The Second Army might be able to chunk in here and then move there over time, but that's a lot of commands. But anyway, the turn got extended, more commands showed up, and now maybe something can happen. It's not too likely. Like I said, the Prussians, you know, are kind of locked into some things that they're doing. The French, they tried some adventurism. It didn't work very well, and I think they learned their lesson. You'll see why I don't do P&P games. I'm sick and tired of it, and I am not taking it any longer. So what I've done is I haven't cut up the cards, which probably would have worked better, except there's sort of a space issue. So there's something of an advantage to me using these, which are a little smaller. There's a big disadvantage, especially in a couple of these where I didn't have much stock left, because I wasn't quite as careful. I thought I would do one sheet per nation, but then I decided, no, I can sleaze both nations out with this. Okay. If I play this again, I'll probably end up trying to do something a little better. But right now, I'm not even sure this is going to work particularly well. But what I've got is all the corps separated out and placed near the army. These are loose corps. And likewise over here, near the army command sheet. What does that do for me? Well, first of all, it means that I can look up the forces easier. You know, if I have a corps here, I know it's going to be right here. I don't have to go hunting, especially on the French chart where things are kind of out of place. But even more than that, I immediately started to see, wow, the Second Army is pretty chewed up, man. You know, yeah, it has some strength here, but these units are pretty badly mauled. Oh, wow, the First Army is in really bad shape. These are things that I was not even aware of, because I'm dealing with this kind of, they're scattered all over here. There's no locality to what my commands are. And I don't feel like I could make reasonable decisions, you know. Geez, I didn't know I only have 1, 2, 3, 4 strength points in that army. That's interesting. Gosh, maybe I had to start putting my reinforcements there instead of where I've been diddling them around with. So that kind of thing is very helpful. It's also going to be helpful for me to add up quickly here. So I've got 5, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 here. I've got 5, 11, 15, 16, 17. Uh-oh. I guess I screwed up. I had miscounted when I was looking before, but it looks like the army of Alsace is bigger. I'd better get Napoleon's ass over there, because if the Prussians hit it, I'm going to take a victory point loss. You see, and a chance of the empire falling. So, because there's so much importance to being able to be aware of what's in the different armies, more or less, this is almost a requirement. Now, I was thinking about other ways of handling it. I thought about doing it all on paper, which would have worked okay, except I'd have to erase and move the corps around. So I thought this might work better. I'm a little worried about the space. You know, hey, if I need to move armies into Brittany, I've got some problems. But, you know, I've got more space on the table now. I can shift a couple of these armies up this way. So as French armies begin appearing, that's going to be there's going to be more ease to it. Also, there's a fair amount of Germany on the board. I don't really need that. I'm pretty sure the French aren't going on into Berlin. So that quickly is my solution to one of the many problems. I feel like somebody ought to redesign all the components for this game. This could have been done with some nice heavy stock, heavier than this, you know, like little cardboard pieces almost that pop out. That would be awesome, because then they wouldn't blow away like I'm sure these are going to. Maybe I'll have to use plexi over the French army there. I don't know. And yeah, just the counters should have bigger names on them, bigger numbers, especially for the corps in the army. Come on, man. That I understand when you have to write Der Lymphen on a counter for whatever reason, that, you know, maybe you don't want to get rid of some of the vowels or something. You want to make sure the whole name is spelled out so you can put it in 4-point font. But, you know, Army, First Army, you could print that a little bigger. And, you know, just the presentation in so many ways is problematic. The map, I'm not going to talk about, obviously that can't be easily redone. But, you know, the counters even can't be. You really have to make your own game for that. Anyway, that's where I am, and we'll see how it works out. I'm sure that a better solution for this would work very nicely, like one with these same pieces as, you know, chit thickness stock, that because and you want that. You don't want this kind of thinner stock here. You want something fairly heavy, because these are going to be moving around and shifting all over the place. Another successful turn extension getting us to here. Prussians are hoping to end on this round, however it happens. A bunch of piddling, just building up forces, because both armies are pretty badly mauled at this point. The French don't really see much opportunity for an aggressive action. We got our ass kicked here. You know, if we really knew how bad the Prussian army was, maybe we'd take another shot at it, but because there's some victory points. If we're hitting it when it doesn't have any strength points in it, there's some victory points to be had for that, but I pumped a few in, so it's not quite as in danger. It might be worth one victory point in a big battle if it goes well for the French, but that's a lot of effort to get there. So instead I entrenched, building up forces in Paris, shuttling troops along the rail lines, since I still control this northern line. That gets me there. I've got no real problem. Anything else? I don't know. For the Prussians, well, they've been building up the First Army. Make a probing attack across or whatever, figuring, hey, I'm hitting the army of Alsace, Napoleon's on it. It could, you know, this could be the end of the empire. Nah. I was able to bring one corps in here. Overall, it was pretty bad looking for the Prussians all the way on the left-hand column. Not because they were massively outnumbered, although they were slightly, but because of the modifiers and everything. And the only thing they had going for them was lots of rerolls. So they were able to pretty much break even and rally before the French do. What that means is, if I get a big roll in Prussia's advantage, I can come back again. But the army's kind of chewed up. I got a couple of corps that are good, but the problem is I got to bring all those corps if I want the artillery bonus. Get that big die roll advantage. They come across, and they're successful. They defeat Napoleon. It's not enough, because it's only a 1-point strength difference. The die roll wasn't within the range to knock the empire out, but I've at least gotten this hex, which, you know, is of some value. And unfortunately, I lost a leader who's not particularly anything. Now I have to check to make sure. No, he's not in my... I don't have a stack of generals waiting here. I had one last turn. But I think I've gotten most of the army generals into play, into the pool. But that means I have a lousy replacement leader in charge of one of my units, and I probably have to do a command replacement there. I left behind my crappy corps this time in terms of leadership, and actually ended up, because I was able to boost up my strength points, with a fair differential on the combat chart. So where I wasn't, pushing the edge of the chart, and then nothing too exciting happened. Bunch of reroll. There was a little bit of tension because there was a bunch of rerolls, and the Prussians got a crappy roll to begin with. They couldn't really do anything to the French roll, but they kept re-rolling their roll. But they needed a 9 to succeed, and their roll could have gotten worse than it initially was, conceivably. So, they saved one re-roll rather than go for a better result, because it's only a strength point difference. A strength point's a big deal, but I mean, it really is. Just in terms of, like, these armies are getting pretty pared down. But it's not worth chancing losing the battle for. The French army also rallies. Napoleon has to run back to the army of the Rhine because this one's gotten hammered. I'm scared. And they dig in. So, it kind of is just that hex. And losses, we did cause one additional loss, but not a huge differential ever. This system and the system it's based on, neither one really causes big losses. I had the overrun rolls, but outside of that, I wanted to cover this because the designer took time on Consim World to defend his leadership decisions. Basically, why the French leaders are decent. Some of them are really crap, but some of them are really quite good, and the Prussian leaders seems to be largely mediocre to poor. Well, his argument for this is kind of hitting from multiple directions, and I really wish it was in the designer's notes. His actual designer notes are mainly biographical information about, how he came to the idea of the game and difficulties in actually getting it, published and play tested and this, that, and the other, rather than the design decisions, which is what I want in the game. I don't really care about the path to get to the game so much as, why did you decide what you're doing? That's what's interesting in designer's notes. The other stuff, it doesn't help you understand what the designer's trying to reflect with the game. And in this case, one of the biggest questions I have is, hey, the Prussians kind of steamrolled the French. How can you justify what's going on here? Well, I didn't ask the question, but he answered it. I don't know. Kyle Seeley pointed me to it. I don't know if he asked the original question. But apparently a lot of people are kind of like, why the hell are the Prussian leaders so crappy comparatively? His view is an interesting one, because the game system already favors the Prussian in terms of the artillery results. And that Prussian leadership was kind of doctrinaire and less experienced than the French. And the French had much more freedom for their commanders to be very good or very bad, for them to go out on the limb on actions. So, baked into the design system are certain advantages for the Prussians once they get past, their assault doctrine problem. But and because of that, is giving the French more capacity to be innovative and to do really clever things. And one of the ways he rated the leaders was not so much on who won the battle, who lost the battle, because they were looking at two different tactical systems in play here, but rather who was clever during the battle, who did neat things and things that might have won the battle. And it's an interesting take, and I have to say I can't object to the take in and of itself, which is to say that the system already gives certain advantages to the Prussians. Now, we saw that maybe defense is just too damn strong, that the entrenchments are just too tough, in the sense that there's a fair chance that the French are going to be able to create an entrenched line, and that's going to cause the Prussians some serious problems. How much you're willing to accept that the beginning of the war gets skewed by that is something to look into. But anyway, I just wanted to chatter a little bit about it. It's an interesting discussion. Besides doing just about nothing, we pushed out to here. I don't remember if that's 2 victory points. I think it is, but it may be more even. Command points are all jammed up against the 20 there. But there's just really nothing either side terribly wants to do. The Prussians kind of out of gas in terms of the strength points they have. If I push forward here, I'm getting too far away from my rail net. I'm exposing, the unit. It just doesn't look terribly useful, although I might try pushing a little bit more. I might try pushing especially into this hex. Kind of cut that Metz off and whatever, because at the same time I can pull these forward. The danger, of course, is though, if I go this way and pull these forward, these guys can intercept into either hex. That could cause some real problems. So yeah, maybe the only answer is to go forward. But instead I'm like, well, I'm weak on units. Let's increase my unit count. And the French are, of course, always happy to do that. I hope we get doubles or something, because yeah, this could take forever if we don't. But doubles will happen eventually, right? Quite soon afterwards, I got one more phase. But I noticed I cheated. Not a big shock. Fourth or greater initiative. 1, 2, 3. I don't know. Tie. Okay, this doesn't match what's here, does it? Is third initiative in here? Third initiative tie is not in here. So this is 1 tie, 2 ties, 3 ties, 4th tie. And then there's a 5th tie? I don't know. I'm going to have to look this up because this does not make sense the way it is. But I think I only gave it 1 point last time. And it's actually, looks like it's supposed to be more than that. Let's see. C8.8. Is that going to tell me? No. Subtract 1 victory point each time a victory point penalty applies. Yeah, well, that doesn't happen. During a turn, they're awarded as a penalty during the use, starting with the command table use marker first enters the stack. They don't say how much here. Over here, they do say how much, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. So, fourth or greater initiative tie. First initiative tie puts you here, second, third. Fourth puts you out to here, so that doesn't make sense. I think what they intend is fourth box. But gosh, I really don't know. In which case, I owe the French 2 victory points already. And then this is going to be... Right, 2. I think, I don't know, because I was at 1, so this would be third box. But if they count that as 4 points, like if somehow getting in here is your 4th tie, but if the map is wrong and you have to make it to here, well then obviously that doesn't work. I'll keep looking in the rules and see if there's an answer, but I think I owe another 1, 2, 3, 4 points to the French. Bothering me is I can't find the third tie. I think this is meant for each tie that you reach in this box, the way I read this. Because it does say this. During a turn, victory points are awarded each use of the command table, starting with, doesn't say how many, use the marker, when it okay, use marker first, I'm sorry. Command table use marker first enters the second to last box on the table. Command table use track. A victory point penalty also applies when it enters the last box and each time a tie occurs in that box. I think that's what it's supposed to mean. But I don't see the penalty for that first box. The third box, actually. But I think I did it right at 1 point for this, and this is just 1 more point. I think. Who the fuck knows, you know? Unfortunately, there's reliance on the player aids to actually express what the rules are trying to say. But here it specifies out, subtract 1 victory point each time a victory point penalty applies, add 1 each time a victory point penalty applies, which is where I kind of got the 1 aspect to it. Now you might ask, well, how is it possible for any die roll to cause, you know, How could you stay there? You can stay there if the von Moltke marker is moved while you're in that space, because that's not going to push this forward or make the next chance greater for ending the turn. Anyway, I got to do sieges and crap like that. And for the sieges, the Prussians got kind of lucky. Both of these fell. And Metz got a single increase. That's, you know, the rate it's going to take 6 turns. That's 3 months for the siege to complete. So fortresses are not at all easy to take. And you can see, obviously, you know, Paris is the goal. That's even harder to take than our fortress and the improved fortresses where those exist. Belfort's one. There are others. Maybe just Paris. Maybe just Paris is the others. Other than Paris. I don't know how many there are. I thought there were like 3, but I think 2 of them are Paris, because I don't see any others. Anyway, so Paris is going to be particularly tough to take. It takes 8 hits, and that's on each of the Paris hexes. Now, granted, you could be sieging them both at the same time. You probably can't be sieging Paris and Metz at the same time, but it's definitely a tough goal where the Prussians are right now. All right, let's load this one up. I've already started the next turn. I like to get my reinforcements placed into their leader pool, into the pools. Prussians got a corps. French got 2 corps because they had 1 that they're recycling.